Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever heard of a phenomenon so powerfully unsettling, it sort of blurs the lines between mind and body, individual and group? Something that really makes you wonder if our perception of reality is, well, maybe far more fragile than we imagine. Today, we're going to tell you a story about a truly bizarre and, frankly, often terrifying phenomenon. It's known as mass hysteria, or sometimes collective psychogenic illness. We've been looking into some fascinating accounts, medical perspectives, historical events, including insights from a source titled that roughly translates to mass delusion, mental illness, or just imagination. And that last part, just imagination, really gets to the core in what we're exploring. Our mission today is to understand what this eerie phenomenon actually is, explore why it happens, and then really immerse ourselves in some real-world examples. Stories so unbelievable they might just challenge how you think about things. Prepare to be intrigued, because these stories we're about to share are genuinely chilling. So, to really set the stage for these incredible accounts, let's start with the basics. What is mass hysteria? Is it like a medical condition, or is it more like our source title hints, just in the mind?
Yeah, that's the fascinating part, isn't it? Mass hysteria, and it goes by other names too, like collective hysteria, mass psychogenic illness, even mass suggestion. It isn't actually classified as a psychiatric disease in the traditional sense. It's not about, say, a chemical imbalance in the brain. And it's not a typical mental illness you could diagnose with a standard test. It's really more of a socio-psychological phenomenon.
Socio-psychological.
Right, think of it like this. It often kicks off with one person. Maybe someone experiences an odd symptom, or they strongly believe something strange is happening. Then that initial idea, or maybe the symptom itself, spreads through a group, almost like a social contagion.
Like catching an idea instead of a cold.
Exactly. And it usually happens among people who already share similar thoughts or beliefs, or maybe they live in similar environments. Perhaps they're all facing the same kind of stress or pressure, Under those shared conditions, this collective idea or fear takes hold. And then the really astonishing part is it manifests as similar physical symptoms across the group.
Wow. So it's not a brain chemistry thing, but like a powerful shared illusion that somehow becomes physically real for people. That's quite something to wrap your head around.
Precisely. It's a really vivid example of that mind-body connection we hear about. And even though doctors can't find any underlying physical cause, the symptoms feel absolutely real to the people experiencing them. We see this phenomenon quite often in adolescents, actually, especially young women. But really, it can affect anyone. It also seems to impact individuals who maybe lack a bit of self-confidence, or who are more open to suggestion. They can be more easily influenced when a powerful idea is introduced, particularly in a high-stress situation. It's sort of the ultimate display of what's sometimes called the nocebo effect, where negative expectations can actually trigger real, tangible symptoms.
That brings us right to it then. If it's not a physical illness, what do these symptoms actually look like? Are we talking about just feeling a bit off, or is it more dramatic?
Oh, they can be incredibly dramatic and varied too, which makes it even more unsettling sometimes. They can range from things like involuntary muscle spasms or convulsions, which can look very much like epileptic seizures, to rapid, erratic breathing, that's hyperventilation. And in some really severe cases, people might faint or experience temporary blindness, even paralysis, or just sudden inexplicable numbness or pain.
Paralysis, blindness, from a belief.
Sounds incredible, right?
Yeah.
But the key thing, as we said, is that despite how intense and real these symptoms feel to the sufferers, rigorous medical exams, physical checks, blood tests, brain scans, they reveal absolutely no abnormalities. The physical stuff is entirely rooted in their thoughts, their anxieties, their collective belief that they are experiencing these effects. The brain, influenced by these powerful social cues and fears, can essentially trick the body into producing these responses.
It's just remarkable how real those symptoms can be without a physical cause. So that raises a huge question. If it's all in the mind collectively, how do you even treat something like this? Can you actually cure a shared belief?
That's a really important point. And yes, it absolutely can be treated, often quite effectively, actually. But the approach needs to be sort of multi-layered, just like the phenomenon itself. You see, mass hysteria often starts with an initiator. That's the person who maybe first shows the symptom or really pushes the triggering idea. So the critical first step is usually to gently, calmly separate that individual from the rest of the group.
To break the chain, basically.
Exactly. It helps break that immediate cycle of spread, stops the social contagion right there. then beyond that, it's really important to separate and offer individual support to everyone affected. Because even though all the tests show nothing physically wrong, some people might still genuinely feel lingering symptoms, or they might hold on to that belief that they're ill. So in those cases, you treat the symptoms themselves. Like if someone is still hyperventilating after being separated, a simple thing like using a medical mask with a bag can help regulate their breathing. It gives them a sense of control, a physical action that can calm them down.
Okay, so managing the physical effects, even if the cause is psychological.
Right. But the deeper level of treatment, especially if someone just can't let go of the thought or the fear that started it all, is psychotherapy. Psychologists, psychiatrists, they'll talk with the individuals, they provide reassurance, explain what's likely happening, help them understand the logical, socio-psychological reasons behind what they experienced. It's really about reframing their understanding, helping them see the difference between a physical illness and a symptom that's been psychologically induced. It's about de-escalation, not just of the symptoms, but of that collective anxiety.
Okay, with that clearer and honestly quite unsettling picture of what mass hysteria involves, let's move from the theory. Let's dive into 3 truly striking real-world cases. These really highlight the immense, sometimes terrifying power of the collective mind. These aren't just old stories, they're eerie reminders of how easily our minds can be swayed. Our first story takes us back to 1962. A small, quiet village where something as seemingly innocent as laughter, well, it morphed into something prolonged, disturbing, an epidemic of laughter.
That's right. This incident is chillingly known as the Tanganyika laughter epidemic. It started on January 30th, 1962 in Kashasha village. That was in Tanganyika then, it's Tanzania now. It began at a girls' boarding school. Apparently 3 girls were telling jokes and they just started laughing uncontrollably. But this wasn't just normal giggling, it was prolonged, intense, and weirdly infectious. It spread really fast through their classroom, then into other rooms. On that very first day, 92 students were caught up in this mysterious laughing fit.
92. Just like that. And what's truly mind-boggling and kind of unnerving is how long these fits lasted. You said some laughed for less than an hour, but others.
Others continued almost nonstop for up to 16 days. Can you imagine?
16 days of uncontrollable laughter. The sheer exhaustion, the confusion must have been immense.
Exactly. It got so disruptive the school actually had to close down in March. But the phenomenon didn't just stop there. When the affected students went home, they kind of inadvertently carried this strange epidemic with them. It spread to their families, then to nearby villages. For example, in another village, New Shamba, another 217 people became affected. And the laughter was often accompanied by things like restlessness, sometimes disorientation.
And this wasn't just a brief flash in the pan. This whole baffling thing went on for an astonishing 1.5 years, 18 months. And even when the laughter finally stopped for some people, it often just changed into other equally distressing symptoms, right?
That's right. It was like a rotating set of manifestations. People who finally stopped laughing might then suddenly start crying uncontrollably or screaming or having anxiety attacks, even fainting. Psychologists and sociologists who looked into it later pretty much concluded it was a classic textbook case of mass hysteria. Their analysis pointed to the huge amount of accumulated stress these students were under, significant academic pressure, societal expectations. Plus, this was happening during a period of intense political change as Tanganyika gained independence. All of that created this fertile ground for collective anxiety to just burst out in this incredibly unusual and, frankly, unforgettable way. It's a stark reminder of how much our external world can impact our internal state, especially in a group.
Wow. From uncontrollable laughter. We pivot now to something that many of you listening might actually recognize. Something that caused genuine panic in Japan back in 1997. The infamous Pokemon incident. Who'd have thought a kid's cartoon could spark a mass psychogenic event? Sounds almost like something out of a horror story itself.
It really does. This happened in Japan in December 1997. It was during the first season of the Pokemon anime, which was hugely popular then. There was this one specific episode, Cyber Soldier Porygon. As it was airing, suddenly, and quite terrifyingly, over 700 children right across Japan started experiencing acute symptoms while watching it.
Over 700? What kind of symptoms are we talking about?
We're talking things like seizures, severe nausea, vomiting, bad headaches, even temporary blindness in some cases. Panicked parents naturally rushed their kids to hospitals. And it was quickly confirmed that all the affected children had been watching that exact same episode at the exact same time.
And what's even weirder, adding to the kind of eerie nature of it all, is that some curious teenagers apparently, after hearing about it, deliberately sought out recordings of the episode, just to see if they would get symptoms, and some actually did.
Yes. In some documented cases, they reported experiencing symptoms too. It's almost like the idea of the symptoms itself became contagious through suggestion. Now, initial theories from doctors pointed towards the rapid flashing lights in the episode. There was a particular sequence with intense red and blue flashes.
The photosensitive epilepsy trigger idea.
Exactly. That was considered a potential trigger for photoepileptic seizures in susceptible individuals. However, the broader conclusion, looking at the sheer numbers and the variety of symptoms, many of which weren't typical seizures, pointed overwhelmingly towards mass hysteria. It's really important to remember not everyone who watched the episode got sick. That highlights the powerful psychological element, the intense media coverage, the widespread panic. It all created this powerful suggestion. It likely turned a potential limited physical trigger for a few into a full-blown collective psychogenic event, really fueled by fear and the power of suggestion.
Incredible. Okay, our final story takes us even deeper into that blurry line between belief and reality. It highlights how collective belief and shared fear can manifest, even through something as simple as a game, the Charlie Challenge. This one feels particularly unsettling because it tapped into existing folklore, that human fascination with contacting the unknown.
Right. This challenge really blew up among young people globally a few years back, especially popular in Western countries and South America. It's essentially a very simplified modern take on something like a Ouija board. A game supposedly used to summon spirits. It went viral very quickly through social media, spreading its eerie appeal.
Okay, let's break this down. For anyone listening who maybe missed this particular viral craze, how exactly is it played? What makes it so compelling and maybe so potentially triggering?
It's deceptively simple, really, which is probably part of its power. You take a piece of paper, draw a cross to make 4 squares, then you write yes and no in alternating squares. Then the key part, you balance 2 pencils on top of each other in a cross shape right in the middle. Players, usually gathered around, often in a quiet or darkened room to build atmosphere, then chant, "Charlie, Charlie, are you here?"
Creating that sense of expectation.
Exactly. The tension builds. If that top pencil moves seemingly on its own towards yes, then it's believed that Charlie, some kind of spirit, is present. Then players can ask yes-no questions, and the pencil is supposed to move to give answers. And crucially, to end the game safely, according to the lore, you have to ask, "Charlie, Charlie, can we stop?" And wait for a yes before you start playing. These little rules and rituals just heighten the suggestibility.
So how does this connect to mass hysteria? How did this simple pencil game escalate into something genuinely alarming for apparently hundreds of kids?
Well, what's truly chilling is that in places like Mexico, there were numerous well-documented reports of children playing this game who then experienced really dramatic symptoms. We're talking about convulsions, seizure-like episodes, or even what witnesses described as looking like possession, screaming, uncontrolled movements, maybe speaking strangely. They were rushed to hospitals, obviously. And again, thorough medical checks found absolutely no physical abnormalities. Nothing wrong with them physically.
So it was attributed to mass hysteria again.
Definitely. The consensus was mass hysteria because you had all the classic ingredients. The participants shared a common belief system. They believed in the game's power, the spirit. They were under similar social pressure from friends and the whole viral nature of the challenge. And they were all doing the same ritualistic, kind of fear-inducing activity together. Their shared expectation mixed with anxiety and that powerful force of suggestion manifested physically. It created a very real, very terrifying experience for them, all without any actual supernatural intervention. It just powerfully underscores how potent a shared belief can be, even in something fictional, when it's amplified by group dynamics and fear.
These 3 stories, the laughter, the Pokemon panic, the Charlie challenge, they really underscore the complex, sometimes deeply unsettling power of our minds, especially when working collectively. Mass hysteria isn't about a virus or a physical illness. It's this chilling reminder of how our thoughts, our fears, our shared anxieties, especially when they get amplified in a group, can manifest in ways that feel incredibly real, tangible, sometimes terrifying. It really shows us that reality, maybe, can be surprisingly subjective at times. So what does this all mean for you, just going about your day? Maybe think about how group dynamics or shared anxieties might subtly influence not just our thoughts, but maybe even physical sensations in everyday life. Are there other more subtle forms of collective influence maybe at play that we often overlook, perhaps in our workplaces, online communities, even just casual social groups? The mind is powerful, and when minds connect, the results can be, well, truly astonishing. We really hope this exploration of mass hysteria has given you some new perspective, maybe a few aha moments that make you look a little differently at the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the unexpected. And hey, if you found these stories as captivating and thought-provoking as we did, please do make sure to like this deep dive. Maybe share it with a friend who loves a good mystery or something a bit unsettling. And definitely subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs, for more spine-tingling explorations into the strange and unexplained. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep that curious mind open.